Alright, what's going on, guys? Today I want to talk about how I changed out the shock on my EX20s and what I've done to improve the waterproofing. Now, as far as the shock goes, the replacement was actually incredibly easy, so I'm not going to show you every single step I did. I literally just needed 2 Allen wrenches and the shock. It just plopped right in, as simple as it seems. Here, I'll show you real quick. Basically, the shock is just being held in by these 2 bars. Bloop, bloop. And they unscrew right on the sides of the machine, right here and right here. You just need an Allen key on each side so you can loosen them up. The spacers fit perfectly right on this shock that I use, the DNM. I think it's like a 30 RC. I'll link it in the description if it's something you're interested in doing. But I mean, it really honestly was as simple as just undoing these, taking out the spacers, putting this one in place, and putting in the spacers. I mean, it was really a super simple upgrade. So I'll be going out to test how it feels now. The friction in the system was extremely low, which was really awesome. Like, without a shock in it, the whole chassis moves super smooth, so that's really good. I'm excited by the design that Gotway decided to go with on this unicycle, because it really is smooth, it's really simple, and it suspends the entire chassis, including the batteries and control board, not just the rider. So like the V11 that I have is a saddle over the machine, so that basically just the rider is suspended, whereas like the S18 was designed so that the entire chassis is suspended, the control board, the batteries, the rider, everything, just the whole tire moves basically. And that's the same here with the EX20s. So I really, really like this design by Gotway. It's super simple, and it seems to be very effective. Now, let's just talk a little bit about why I made this shock change. Unfortunately, this shock that Gotway sent me is leaking air. I tried tightening the Schrader valve. I tried changing out the Schrader valve. Nothing was working. It kept leaking out the air, so it actually was not working, essentially. I got in contact with Gotway, Begoe, and they did tell me that they're actually using a new shock now. They're not going to be sending out units with this particular shock that they sent me. So they are going to send me whatever the new shock is. So when I do get that, we'll test it, we'll check it out. Since it was so easy to swap in, I'll swap the new shock in there, and we'll do a video with a little comparison between the new shock that Begoe sends me and the DNM that I installed. Alright, and that's really all I have for you as far as the suspension change. Now I want to kind of talk about the waterproofing and what I'm going to do to improve the weatherproofing of the EX20s. In general, I think the waterproofing on this vehicle is pretty good. The battery cases themselves are very, very tight. They look like they're fine. I'm not actually going to do anything to the battery cases. It's mostly the top control board area, and here, the motor wires. Like up here where the control board sits, this is kind of where I'm going to add a little stuff. These motor wires here on the side that actually go to the battery, I'm going to do a little work on those. And just to throw in, this kickstand is amazing. The kickstand on my V11 is terrible. It doesn't work at all. This kickstand works great. Okay, so first of all, this top plate right here is just held on by 6 screws. They just come right off. And it opens up to kind of like our power station here. You've got your charge ports, you've got your battery leads all coming in. The actual control board itself is up in this compartment. So this compartment here is where a lot of electrical components sit. And as you can see, these little side areas where the cords kind of come in aren't really very well sealed at all. So I'm going to be doing something here to add. I'm probably just going to tape over these areas. I don't think I need to silicone this all down, especially because of how wide these gaps are. I don't really see silicone really working. So I'm going to be taping this actually because it's underneath the seat. You're not going to see the tape anyway. And it'll give me easier access in the future if I need to get in here. It's not going to all be gooped up and silicone down. It'll just be some tape that I can remove. So here is my basic plan, right? I'm using this little piece of tape here to cover the gap so that when I put this down into it, it'll cover up a lot of that hole. Alright, so now that I've run a little bit of tape over each of these 4 openings here on the sides, I went ahead and sealed this back up, tightened this real good around it. Now I'm just going to run a little bit of tape around each of the edges, just for a little added protection. So I'm just using some Gorilla Tape, and I went ahead and just threw a bead of it around the entire board here, just for an added layer of water protection, just to try and stop any water from getting in there. Okay, now for this top control board piece here, it's got these 4 little clips to undo it with, and there's also a seam running around the edge. So I'm just going to throw a piece of tape around the entire thing and over each one of these little clips. Alright, not bad at all. Nice little taped up on all the seams here. Boom, 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 from the front. Tape down all these cords. So now the last bit of waterproofing is this light, which I think, well, I shouldn't say last, because I do have another whole project. I would like to put a mud guard from this bar extending all the way to the top of this light. So I'm going to have to 3D print something that connects up in there all the way up to here, just so that this tire isn't throwing mud or water up into my heat sink here. So I am going to be designing something there, and hopefully that'll partially mitigate some of what looks like not the most waterproof lighting system here. But the mud guard will have to be another day. That'll be another whole video. We'll go through some 3D printing design talk and how a 3D printer works. We'll talk about all that. And then for now, though, I'm just going to throw a little tape on the back of this and probably underneath it too, just to try and keep, again, as much water from getting into it as possible. I should also mention, actually, this front headlight here is actually adjustable. You can see this pin right here can actually move forward and back to raise this up and down. My initial impression on this was that it points way too low on the ground, so I'm going to try raising it up. But yeah, it's really cool that that's adjustable, and it's actually comes right off too, so you could actually replace this with anything you want. So you could put something real beefy here if you wanted. I love how customizable this thing is. I mean, the amount of changes and work that you can do to this easily, it's really awesome. Alright, so put a couple of sheets over the top here to kind of act as how that mud guard eventually will be. Just stop rain from getting on top of it. A couple pieces underneath here, just to, again, just try to limit as much water as possible. And I think that's going to be pretty much it here for our customization. This underneath here is already all siliconed, so I'm not too worried about that. It does have a mud guard in the back already. I have not tested to see how good that works. But yeah, she's just about ready to slap some pads on. Here's just a quick sneak peek of some of the 3D printed bumpers I've got coming off of the 3D printer here tonight. We'll get these on the corners of the machine. Oh yeah, baby. It looks sweet. Alright guys, well that's going to be all for today's little weatherproofing and suspension episode. I think tomorrow I'm going to take her out and do a little range test. I should have my bumpers finished printed by tomorrow. I'm padding her up right now, so stay tuned. Catch you next time.